All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to another episode of Off the Wall. It's your boy Dazzle167 bringing you another episode today. And today we got a good one. Today we have former Call of Duty pro and content manager for the Cavs Legion, Halina Malik, also known as BlondeVenom. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. I am very excited for this interview, mainly because there's a lot of stuff that the little I know about you so far is very intriguing, and I want to know a lot more about it. I'm a huge Cavs fan. I live in the area, the Northeast Ohio area, so I've always gone to like the Cavs games and stuff like that, and I'm a
Good, good.
huge NBA 2K fan. So
There we go.
when I knew all of this stuff was happening, when I knew about the 2K league and stuff like that, because I got into it pretty late. I didn't get into it until like I don't know, maybe like a season after it had already started. It took me a while, but then
Gotcha.
as soon as I got into it, I was like, oh, this is awesome. This is exactly what I wanted to happen, that I thought should happen. So we'll get into all of that, here closely. But before we start, I want to talk a little bit about your gaming origins, because I first always ask people about that on the show. I ask about their gaming origins, like how they get into gaming and stuff like that. And then, transition that to your Call of Duty, because I find that really interesting as well. So talk to us about like some of the first games that you started playing and how that transitioned to Call of Duty.
Yeah, definitely. So it's funny because like when I grew up, people go to McDonald's and they bring their kids up to like the play place instead of like going up and playing on the play place. Like I'd go right to Galaga, like right to the like arcade games. Like I'd
Right.
beg my parents for quarters, like that type of deal. And that transitions obviously to like console gaming. I'm pretty sure one of my first consoles was like Nintendo 64. Had my Game Boy, transitioning into like PlayStation 2, the GameCube, era. Loved Super Smash Brothers as a kid growing up, but really it was a couple of my friends who got me into Call of Duty, just casually. They loved the game mode Zombies, so that's kind of where it all began, was the Zombies game mode, and we would play it religiously. And there was actually a gaming cafe right by my house in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, called Game On. And right when it opened, I went to their grand opening and played Zombies and played Call of Duty with a couple of guys who were there. And Game On started hosting some Call of Duty tournaments. So that's really kind of where it all started, was very grassroots, very casual. And then they said, hey, there's a major league tournament in Columbus. It's only like a 2 hour drive, 2.5 hour drive. Why don't you go try it? So we brought a couple of the guys from the Land Center and gave it a shot, and it was all downhill from there. I mean, we fell in love with it and have been to, dozens and dozens and dozens of MLG tournaments since.
Wow. So, and I mean, it's funny because, I feel like I come from the same era, right? Back in like Halo 1, where
Yes,
you
yes.
had to get into LAN tournaments, because like
Yep.
that was the only real way. There was no Xbox Live at the time. It was you connecting a bunch of Xboxes together and having two TVs and having teams and whatever like that. Like there's no other way. There was no other way to do it. So, and then obviously, like you mentioned, I also had like a gaming cafe where you would go and play, game, because at the time, like, who could afford the whatever live subscription or whatever at the time? You wanted to play online, you had to go to like a gaming cafe or something like that, right? And like
Yeah.
play, like, I don't know, $10 an hour for, for to play online. But that's really interesting, because that was like super grassroots, and there's transition from that to now, because I know, I've spoken to some kids who, they're pros now, but like they didn't grow up in an era, they already, esports was already big, you know and
Oh yeah.
at that time, esports was like just you and your buddies basically doing tournaments. So, you mentioned how you started off with the zombie mode, which I've always loved of Call of Duty.
Oh yeah.
I think that the campaigns have always been underrated. I think the campaigns have always been great, and I love the campaigns and stuff like that. But the zombie mode is always fun, and I always thought that
It's
was really
sweet.
cool. How was how was the transition from that? Because that seemed to be like the first thing that you really cling on to, like, you know, in Call of Duty. And then how did that transition into like you know, going pro? Because I'm assuming that, like, I mean, those are two different animals, right? You're talking about like zombies is like whatever, but like actual like tournament settings, like what was the difference between that transition?
Yeah, I mean, it's always habits. And when you start forming habits, you start getting routines, and once routines kick in, you start actually getting good practice in. So, you know, a habit was after school every day off the bus, going to the gaming cafe, and then a routine was practicing and playing zombies, you know, with the guys every day. And from there, you know, it's like, oh, hey, you know, we're gonna throw a tournament. We're trying to get more people involved. You know, do you want to be a part of it? So it's really practice makes perfect almost. And even if it starts with just a grassroots team with just, you know, four of you, you know, we ended up saying, oh, hey, so and so's not good. Maybe we pick up a better player here. And then so and so needs to play this role because that's how the pros play. And slowly, 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 you adapt into a competitive team and you say, well, you know what? Let's try to play a game battles match online. Let's just do $1 wager. So we would go to the gaming cafe and put up $1 online match wager and say, let's test it and see what's up. And you accumulate dollar after dollar and you play $5 matches. Then you get cocky. You know, you play a little bit more and more and more until you figure out, hey, like there's actual strategy to this. I'm pretty good.
Right, right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And Call of Duty is, you know, for a lot of people, Call of Duty is the gold standard for a lot of first person shooters, right? I mean, it's like the game that is probably one of the most well known first person shooters. So, talk to me about your thoughts on Call of Duty as an esports now, because it's grown exponentially. I mean, I think they went to the same route that like Overwatch League did, where they, you know, they're picking cities,
Franchising.
yeah, and they're
Yeah.
franchising. What are your thoughts on that? Because I mean, you were in an era where it was, you know, MLG era, where it was like all
Right.
like completely different. So what are your thoughts on it now?
Yeah, I think franchising is the best way to legitimately grow a fan base. You know, you it's like traditional sports. You want people to fall in love with your brand. It's a really great way to have a local boots on the ground activations. Like if we want to host a watch party in Cleveland, like as part of the Cleveland Cavaliers, like it's a great way to build a community. But that being said, there's a lot of negatives to esports franchising, especially the price tag that's on it. I think
Right.
some of the price tags are ridiculous in like the Overwatch and Call of Duty world that are just not realistic in terms of like operating costs and actually running a business. But from a fan development perspective, it's really the only way that I think you can capture a large market.
Absolutely. I think that's true, because you know, I have my favorite team for Overwatch, and you know, I've been looking at the Call of Duty teams. Like I don't know a lot about the Call of Duty scene, but when I see some of the team names, I'm like, "Ooh, I like to gravitate towards this team," or like I really like the image and the stuff for the, I believe it's the New York Subliners, right? Is that the,
Okay, yeah.
and then the LA Gorillas, that looks like a cool brand. Like I was like looking at a couple of them, I was like, oh, some of these like look really cool. Like I could see me buying a hat for like the LA Gorillas because I just like their branding. And
Yeah.
that's kind of how
No,
it
definitely.
starts. Yeah. So I love the idea. I love the concept, and I can't wait to keep going. But let's move on to talk to a little bit about Cavs Legion and the NBA 2K League and stuff like that, because I, first of all, I love this. I've bought every 2K since it was 2K, since it was
Nice.
like since it came out. So I love NBA 2K. And when I thought about esports, like going into, I'm like, oh well, you know, I always thought, oh, it's gonna be hard for games like NBA and Madden and all these to kind of have like a legitimate like esports thing, because you know there's already like you're basically playing a game that's already a game. right? Like there those basketball players who are already basketball. You could just watch the game instead of just watching people play the game that is already a game. It's like game inception, right? It's like there's a game within a game. But like but like then I saw how the NBA 2K League started developing and how they were drafting actual play, and that blew my mind. I was like, that's what it should be. And it's so awesome and unique because it takes you into what people already love about the NBA. Is like the drafting and the getting positions and all this stuff, and you're just moving it into esports. I know people who don't play video games, like they don't play anything. They'll play Madden every now and then or NBA or stuff like that. And I show them 2K League and they're like, "Oh, this is awesome. I want to watch this like alongside my regular NBA games."
Yeah.
Because
No, absolutely.
it's great, and it's cool because these teams are separate enough from their counterparts that you can have a I don't know, the Brooklyn Nets could be doing bad in real life, but in the NBA 2K League they could be doing great, right? And or like
Cavs right now.
exactly, like and that's my point. Like you could root for like a city and be like, all right, well my Cavs aren't doing it that great, but the Legion is doing great. I might watch them a little bit more because they're doing fantastic. So I love that concept. Tell me how you got integrated into the Cavs Legion. What was that process like? And what exactly do you do for Legions, and how does that role for you work?
Yeah. So currently, I'm the manager of content and marketing. So basically, for the team, I do all of the social media, community events, fan engagement, anywhere from branding, really anything that you look at as a fan and say, okay, how do I connect to this? That's kind of what I do. So I manage a team of photographers, content creators, graphic designers, editors, that whole thing, and make sure everything gets done on time. So you'll see, we have actually the draft for us is coming up tomorrow. So we are drafting our 6 man. So you'll see all sorts of tweets, I'm on the clock, all sorts of things that I manage and help create.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. I think that, and a lot of people don't know this because I've talked to a lot of people like esports professionals, people who are working in not necessarily the behind the scenes of the mechanisms of esports, and a lot of people have told me that the real money in esports isn't necessarily what people may think, but a lot of it is content, right? A lot of it is having the content creation of it. So like even if a team wins or lose, sometimes that has no effect on the actual bottom line money wise. Sometimes it's just the content creation of the team itself, and then that sometimes makes more money than the team itself. Like
No,
so
absolutely. You'll see that's really common, especially if you create the content first and then sell it. So you can prove the model of, hey, so many people watch this, and then you can go out and pitch it and say, hey, we have a ton of people watching this content instead of the older model, which was, okay, do you guys want to buy a video from us? What do you want that to be?
Right, right. Yeah, no, exactly. And it's really cool. So I know a lot of different esports have had situations where their team does something and then their content creation has a lot to do with like, oh, well, we'll go behind the scenes on the players and talk about this and that and all of that stuff. What is the Cavs Legion content creation like? What are you guys working on? Is there anything that is in the pipeline? How do you go about creating content?
Yeah, so you'll see we're posting a video, and probably actually when this interview is over, probably in an hour from now, that's surrounded around the pre-draft. So it is a fireside chat, kind of like this, like a podcast with 3 of our players and one of our coaches, and talking about what qualities they're looking for in a 6 man. Who are they looking at right now? What's the draft pool looking like? Like basically just a really open, candid discussion since it's tomorrow.
Right.
And this is sponsored by Hot Pockets. So you'll see
Mm.
that there's Hot Pockets on the table. Hot Pockets is integrated in the conversations. And it was just a really cool piece that we got to put out. It's a little long, it's 6 or 7 minutes of a video piece, which is longer than we usually do. But I think it was important to get the player perspectives, and just talk openly and honestly about, really what they're looking for in a teammate.
Yeah, perfect. And by the way, perfect sponsorship. I don't think of any other gamer food better than Hot Pockets.
It's
Maybe
so natural.
right. Like maybe Doritos or Mountain Dew, but other than that, Hot Pockets is right up there as far as gamer
So
food goes.
natural.
I mean, sometimes like you're playing, you need a Hot Pocket, you got like it's just ready immediately. When we'll talk about this a little more in depth, but when I visited the practice facilities for the tournament, the Super Smash Brothers tournament, you guys, Hot Pockets was generous enough to, have like free Hot Pockets at the tournament.
Yes.
That was amazing. And it was so cool how
You
it was
liked it.
integrated. Not to mention, there was a giant Hot Pocket that just came out of nowhere and started going around the area, which I thought was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So, all of that was really, really cool. I think that like the whole process of the content creation is really interesting. So what is it that is it sometimes harder to come up with ideas of stuff that's new stuff to make, or do sometimes you have to like just work on stuff that works, as far as like what are you looking to what works right now for your content creation? What have you seen that people want more of, and how do you provide that?
Yeah, I think now that we have 2 seasons under our belt, now this is like really the first year that we can actually analyze that and say, okay, what worked, what didn't work. I think a lot of, surprisingly, the highlight content that we thought would be great actually turned out not to be great. They were more so interested in seeing the players talk and have discussions. So we are, now still obviously, there needs to be highlights in some capacity, but we won't be putting all of our time and energy into highlights like we were before, and really just utilizing the players and their voices more than we did before. We thought, we could have, dunk highlights and 3-point highlights, but really, they want O'Leary talking about, everything. They want to know. They want to know how long the bus ride was from New York City hotel to the studio. Like they want to know the nitty gritty from the player's perspective. So, really, our attitudes are switching towards that in a good way.
Ah, absolutely. And I think that's the best part about this esports, and especially 2K League being so young, is that you guys really are looking out for what the fans really like and can
Absolutely.
adapt to it. An institution like the NBA, who's been around for so long, they can do whatever and they just be like, this is what you guys get, and this is what we'll have for you. Which is, I mean, and that's not saying anything bad about the NBA, because I love the NBA. But what I'm saying is like the good thing about the 2K League is that you guys really adapt to and listen to the audience, and like, it's great to see like a lot of those processes, like the draft, for example, is such a great interactive way for the audience to get engaged into the 2K League. And I love watching it. I love watching the regular draft. And then when I saw that 2K League had a draft, I was like, oh, that's even better. I get to watch gamers awkwardly get drafted into the league. That's
Yes.
awesome. It's perfect.
Yes.
So I love that. So let me talk to you about this. So O'Leary, which is a huge, not only person within your organization, but I think he's a big personality, a big individual in esports in general. We saw him. What was it? Esports Moment of the Year, right? That he won.
Correct.
Huge deal. How is it integrating him? Like, have you seen, obviously from a content creation point of view, integrating him to do a lot of different things? People want to hear more about him, about his perspective. Obviously, you mentioned that. What sort of ideas have you guys been talking about to like integrate him to do certain things? Because I know people want to see more of him, but how do you try to get him to do more than just podcasts and stuff like that? What else is going on with him and players like him to kind of get fans and audiences engaged?
Yeah, definitely. One of the cool things we do is we actually tack on to the Cavaliers youth camps. So when they have summer camps and summer academies in different high schools and rec centers around, the Ohio area, we actually take our players to those basketball camps and we bring some mobile consoles and some monitors, and we have them play with the pros and sign autographs, take pictures with them. So there's this really amazing photo that I'll show you with Tim. There's literally 100 kids with Legion T-shirts surrounding him, and he's basically like just caked in the middle of all these kids, and it just makes me smile every time I see it. But obviously, it's not just all about Tim. He is the captain of our team. He is the leader, but we want to make sure that everybody from the sixth man to the coach to the guy who was holding the camera. We want everybody on staff and on the bench and starting to be a part of Legion, and making sure that everybody is a personality. So, not to diminish anything that Tim is. I mean, love him as a person, love him as a professional, but I also need to be cautious of making sure that our sixth man who we're drafting tomorrow is just as hyped to all these kids at the youth camp as Tim or All Hail Trey or Strainer, etc.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, let's talk about the practice facility
Yeah.
because that's one of the most impressive things that I've seen i- in this region. Because I think that when you think of esports and you think of the impact it has, okay, so like Korea has a culture of esports that's just ingrained in them, right? They have stadiums and arenas for esports, and people fill those places up. But I don't think America has the culture as in depth as that yet. But I think that we're getting there, right? Because but when you think about esports, you think about the larger markets like maybe New York or LA, but places like Cleveland might get missed by some of those things. And I think that the Cavs Legion practice facility is such a great way to integrate other esports into what you guys have already had. So when I went to visit the practice facility, there was a Super Smash Brothers tournament going on over there, and it was fantastic. It was a great event. I took my daughter, and it was a great place to go for. What are you guys planning on doing? Like, well, before you talk about the future plans and stuff like that, tell me about the idea of bringing the facility together and what you plan to do with it in the future.
Yeah, definitely. So, originally we wanted to make sure that the guys had the best practice space possible, the best competitive advantage that we could in the 2K league. But I'm not sure if you know this, but our season is only about 4 months long. We have a really long off season, about 8 months. So how do we not let all of this great technology go to waste? How do we bring this to the community in 8 months? So that's really where, um, you know, we would love to host tournaments and watch parties and really just not let that collect dust. I mean, we want as many people coming through that facility as possible.
Absolutely. I think that's great. And there was a lot of interesting things that I saw at the facility that I have so many questions about. So obviously there's a bunch of rows filled with computers and consoles and stuff like that, where I'm assuming a lot of people can practice and play. Or in the case that I was watching, there was a tournament going on. But there's also a small area to the left hand side where it was like like for streamers, for people who were like a streaming area. Tell me a little bit about that because I find that really interesting.
Yeah, so we have our two private streaming pods that are our Kent State esports streaming pods. So Kent State actually has a varsity team for esports. So not only do they give scholarships for their players, but they also give scholarships for their esports coaches and managers as well. And as you touched on before, that California and Texas all had these larger esports markets. We're seeing more and more in Ohio specifically that there are a lot of colleges with esports programs, not just clubs, but actual varsity teams. Um, so this is a great facility and a great opportunity for them to host their practices here in our facility. It costs a lot of money to create a state of the art gaming facility. So we could have these colleges, come to us almost.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It seems like a great opportunity and a great way to integrate a lot of these students and get them involved in it. And I thought it was great, and it looks fantastic as well. It looks like a great place to stream, and the facility itself is awesome. I think that I would love to go to future events. Do you have anything in the pipeline? I know there's probably stuff that you probably can't say, but is there anything that you can say about any future events that might be looking, or anything that you're thinking about having?
Yeah, so one that's going on right now, we haven't advertised it heavily, but I'm not sure if you're familiar with Force Sports. They're an indoor soccer arena. They're actually hosting a FIFA tournament at the Lair. It's for a nonprofit, so there are it's $40 tickets, but all of it goes to their nonprofit organization, and to play a FIFA tournament for kids ages 7 to 19. So that's on March
Oh.
1st, and we're really excited about FIFA. It'll give me an opportunity to kind of see a FIFA tournament in person, see how that operates, and hopefully we can open FIFA up to the public and not have an age limit on it in the future. But this is a great foot in the door for us in our relationship with Force Sports. It's a great foot in the door for FIFA as a whole, and we're really excited to have the nonprofit attached to it. But there are some other really cool things coming down the pipeline. I'm sure the first thing I think of is obviously a Cavs Legion watch party. So
Mm.
our season tips off March 27th is our tip off tournament. So about a month from now. But you could obviously look forward to a lot of Legion watch parties since the games are all held in New York City. We'd love to get that place packed with people watching our games.
Well, I will say that I will be happy to go to one of those, because
Good, I'd love it.
that sounds awesome. I mean, I think that like that's even better. When you watch sports and stuff like that, you often go to people often go to sports bars, or they'll do it at home and what with watch party. But I think a watch party at the facility would be phenomenal. So that sounds amazing as well. You mentioned that the draft is tomorrow, correct?
Correct.
So
Yes, 6 o'clock.
tell us a little bit about the process. Your thoughts on, I know you obviously, I don't think you can, or even if you know who exactly you're going to draft, you would, even if you knew, you probably wouldn't tell me. But the question is, what's the process that the team goes to? What do you guys need? What do you guys want from a player? What are some of the qualifications for you guys to draft somebody? What do you need? What do you want?
Yeah, definitely. Let me even start off talking about the process of getting drafted, because it really is in depth. It's not just like, oh, this kid's good, let's draft him.
Right.
It's very in depth how the NBA goes about it. So during the months of October, November, December, um, if you have the retail copy of the game, you can actually try to qualify online during those months. You have to get a certain win percentage, and play a certain amount of games in certain time frames. So if you qualify, you then get entered into the combine. So then everybody from the combine plays each other, and the NBA has a certain algorithm that basically spits out the best 200 to 250
Mm.
players in the world. So it's really no joke of a process. You really have to show off all your abilities. It's not just scoring; like, it doesn't go just off of how many points you get. It's really about um, you know your vision and passing. Did you miss that pass while this guy was open? Are you splitting the floor well? Do you have good spacing? It goes extremely, extremely in depth. So people should be extremely proud even just to make it to the draft pool. But that being said, me specifically, since Legion already has, 5 players, there's a whole system where you can retain players. We have real trades. So some teams are drafting their whole 6, some teams are drafting 5, some teams are drafting 4. We are, I think, either 1 or 2 teams who is only drafting 1 player. So really, we're looking for somebody who is good at content, who is good at communicating, who is a good listener, because we have all veteran guys and an extremely, extremely, extremely brilliant coach. And so we need somebody who is moldable and coachable and ready to fill in any position at any moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I think that that's definitely something, um that sounds like exactly what the team needs, because some teams you don't want to all you need is somebody who can just improve what you already have. So obviously you have that team that can already do so much. I think that process is amazing. It sounds like Moneyball, the video game, basically.
It definitely is.
there's
Definitely
a there's an algorithm and everything. And listen, I'm just gonna say this, that everybody out there is just lucky that I haven't gone through that, because I would get drafted as a center. I'm just saying.
Oh my God.
Just saying that I would have gotten drafted. You guys are all lucky out there, all right? That's all I'm saying. But that's a really cool thing. The whole process about people get drafting and stuff like that. What I find really interesting is the fact that it's working alongside the NBA and the game itself, and how everything seems like such a big community. Like the NBA and the 2K developers, they all want this to succeed, and they're making it like they're all working together. And it seems like a no-brainer, but for a lot of esports now, it seems like sometimes that the developers or the game or the esports itself kind of go in different hands, and so they don't ever get to like mesh with themselves, and sometimes to the detriment of the entire scene. So I really appreciate what NBA and the 2K developers are all doing into this, into making the game like a really one thing. I really love that that's happening. I want to ask you about the upcoming season. Obviously you'll have the draft, and then there'll be a season afterwards. What are some of your goals for this upcoming season, as far as like, obviously people want to win and stuff like that, but tell me about some of the immediate goals that you want to pursue, as far as like specific things.
Yeah, I think for me personally, this is a playoff team. Since we have 5 retained players and we're only drafting 1, I think the expectations are automatically playoffs. This isn't something where we're drafting rookies and it's just a rebuild year. Like that's not the case here. This is a playoff team. There's really no excuses for that. So we want to see them, really just blow out the competition this year from a competitive standpoint.
Right.
I think also for us, it's important to prove the model of the layer itself of the practice facility, and try to have other teams also replicate what we're doing there. We would love, as a goal, to have other teams kind of copy paste what we're doing with the layer. I would love to see another team come out with their facility. That's a public venue, because it's another source of revenue for teams.
Absolutely. And I think that's great, because you succeeded in doing something when other people try to replicate the same thing. And I really hope it works out, just because, having a brick and mortar facility for fans to engage with is so important. I think as a fan of the league, of the game, of the sport itself, I love to have things like that, like I'm never gonna be able to play in the 2K League, but I want to watch it so badly. That's true. That's true. They're just lucky that I haven't gone through a process yet. That's all I'm saying. But I think that it's really cool for fans to watch, because I think that as a sports fan, even as a sports fan, I love watching it. I love doing like the fantasy leagues and stuff like that. And I think that interaction is very close to what you see in the esports. If anything, the NBA 2K League is sort of like a live version of a fantasy league, right? Except you get people who know what they're doing and playing the actual game for you. So I think it's really cool to see that happening. So you have a veteran squad, and you have a team that can really go all the way. You have a team that can do a lot of great things during the season. Is there any team right now that you're looking at that you're like, we have to look out for them? Any specific players that your other players have talked to you about and be like, hey, listen, we've done our game plan. We're looking at other people. What are some of the threats out there that you guys have seen so far?
Definitely. I think the easy one for me is Blazer 5 Gaming. The Trailblazers team.
Right.
They've won the regular season in the 2K League both times. They haven't made it far in the playoffs, but um, you know, their regular season record is insane. They might only lose one or two games this season in the regular season. They just haven't had luck in the playoffs. So I think this is kind of their year of vengeance where they're looking to go all the way, especially with a proven track record, also with veterans. So they're always a team to look out for, and that's been since the inception of the league. So I would say this year is not an outlier. I think they're here to play.
Absolutely. That's really good to know. I think it goes to show, like, there's a lot of respect on each side about who goes where, and like what happens to different players and stuff like that. Um, let me say this. The NBA 2K games, obviously they come out every year, and there's developments and stuff like that that probably have to change. What are some of the things that happen within the organization when a new 2K game comes out and there's changes? Like, there's changes. Sometimes the changes could be small within the game mechanics itself, but sometimes they're big. Sometimes they're big changes where it changes. Now shooting is gonna be, triangle or X or what,
Sure.
like something really drastic like that might happen. So tell me about what is the process that the organization goes through to kind of follow through each game, and how do you guys develop that strategy?
Yeah, so since the league itself, the NBA 2K League, is a 50-50 venture. It's 50% NBA, 50% Take-Two, which is the developer. They actually come out with a 2K League build every year that's not in the retail copy of the game. So each team will get access to a private copy of the league build. That's the mode that we all practice on, that really nobody else can frankly touch. So retail versions uh, and updates really don't affect us as much. There was an update season one halfway through our league that they updated the league build,
Mm,
where that got a little dicey.
I bet.
Don't want to go into that too much, but it definitely is interesting to see how players adapt, and try to overcome those things. Frankly, it doesn't happen to us often. It might happen once a year, if that, which still is challenging. But thankfully, these guys are professionals, and with scrimming, with repetition and routine, they can get over it pretty quickly just because they're professionals. Where if it was somebody like you and me, I don't know if we'd ever get over it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm old enough now to where if a game changes a button, I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah, you're like, I'm done. That was it.
That's
I'll see ya.
it. That's it. You just changed the whole game for me. I don't want to do this
Yeah,
anymore.
peace. Yeah.
Right, just because I'm set in my ways already. But so, but I one of the things that I've always loved about the regular season of the NBA, the regular NBA, some of the content creation that they do is some of the when they have like the moments when the players are when they're mic'd up and they talk.
Oh yeah.
That's always really cool. Is there anything like that within the NBA 2K League? I feel like that would be an awesome content creation to hear people's call outs during games or practices. Maybe like a practice where people could do their regular call outs and people can hear it. Or is that too much information to show other teams?
No. It's not too much. I think there's a really good comedic one that the Blazers actually came out with that was just them, talking smack, like a mic'd up segment.
Yeah.
That's like a compilation. The one troubling thing is that the games are always in New York City. So if you wanted to fly out a content team, you're looking at a lot of expenditures when it comes to sending people to New York City. We luckily have good relationships with some content people that are local to New York, who come into the games. So that's usually the route we take. But like you said, I mean, lobbing people up and getting the mic'd up series, I mean, that's awesome. That's exactly what we want to be doing.
Yeah, and listen, all I'm saying is in the future, I just want to see a Legion Lair trash talking session
I love it.
of
I love
people
it.
just practicing, a maybe like a scrimmage between the players themselves, and have them trash talk each other. I think that would be fun to see. and watch. I think that would be hilarious, because I think that's always part of the fun of some of these games, whether it's like, especially the sports games, whether it's Madden or NBA. You know, that the best part about it is watching the trash talk between players, uh, especially in these games. Um,
Agreed. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I think that's pretty much it as far as like the questions that I have for you. And I really appreciate the time and effort and everything that for you coming on the show and talking to us about everything. So thank you so much for being on the show. I really do appreciate it. Is there any shout outs or anything that you would like to talk or promote before we leave?
No, definitely. I mean, just first of all, thank you for having me. I think talking about the Legion is the really the best way to get our name out there. So if you guys don't mind, if you're watching, follow at Cav Legion GC. That's our official Twitter handle. Would love for you guys to follow the team, check out the draft tomorrow. But again, thank you so much for everything. This is awesome. You have a great show going here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And trust me, I will try to go to as many events as I can. I think it's spectacular. I think the place is so cool. I think the stuff that you guys have over there is great. And I loved my first experience there, and I cannot wait to have more of those. So I look forward to doing that as well.
Awesome.
So
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dazzle.
absolutely. Thank you for being on the show. And everybody out there, thank you so much for passing by. I really appreciate it. For updates on who's going to be on the show, check out twitter.com/dazzle167. I'll update everybody who is going to be on the show. And who knows, maybe we'll have maybe in the future, we might actually have some more Cavs Legion
Ooh.
people on the show. Who knows? Maybe we'll see. And we'll talk about that at some point. And then all the updates will be on twitter.com. If you have any questions about the show, my DMs are open. Make sure you message me and let me know, and we'll have that. So again, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. And guys, till next time, we'll see you guys. Bye.